Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out my channel today. Another song review today. We're going to do Going to Die by Nekrogoblikon. I've been waiting to do a metal song for a while. I'm a big fan of metal. My ADHD brain really likes it. And I have another metal song that I want to do down the road. But as someone who grew up in a very fundamentalist religion, and that was really bad fitting for me, and then like deconstructing and leaving religion, metal's become like really important for my own mental health, as far as like having music that really validates my experience, and like the neurodivergent part of my brain that was always kind of like middle finger to the law. Like metal for me is that to like my religious upbringing. And then this is a song that through kind of satire brings up a lot of really interesting concepts around mental health. It's called Going to Die. So there's a lot of mental health here in the song. So I'm excited to get into it. I'm going to talk very bluntly and like forward about things like suicide, because that's a topic that comes up in the song. And YouTube doesn't like that. Like, where social media, you say unaliving, but I'm a therapist. And like, I think talking about things directly and using language that has meaning, agreed upon meaning, like suicide means taking your life. Those are things that I think are really helpful. And so I'm going to do best practices for mental health, not best practices for the YouTube algorithm. So just a note on language and trigger warnings, I guess. Another reason why I'm not going to be YouTube famous. If I was trying to be YouTube famous, I wouldn't pick a song by Nekrogoblikon, who is awesome and amazing. And I think they're a great band, but also like metal isn't a super popular genre. Enough preamble. My lovely partners, like, you talk too much before you start your videos. So let's get into it. Nekrogoblikon has an official sing-along video for this song. So I'm using that for the lyrics. And if you're unfamiliar with metal, if you have a hard time understanding like the growling and some of the screaming that can happen, and I don't think like this is an intro to metal song. So if you're not a fan of metal, this isn't a good one to get started on. But if you're a fan of metal, this is a great song. It's very fun. I'll talk about why I love Nekrogoblikon as we get into the song. But let's get into the song. I'm using the sing-along video, which is a bit of fun.
Infinite dimensions, from far beyond the weeping cosmos, I have traveled. An endless, indeterminate quest for but one simple truth. I cannot take this goddamn life for a night. I'm ready to die at the top of the morning. I cannot take this goddamn life for a night.
Okay, so I have so many things to say about this song. I'm going to start. I gave this little preamble about like I was raised religious and conservatively, so evangelical, fundamentalist. So for a reason, I deal a lot with like religious trauma. It's one of my areas of specialty, and so I see I experienced a lot of hell trauma. I experienced like a lot of fear. I was told as a little kid that literal Christian hell, where like the devil rules and there's fire and you're tortured forever, was a real place. And that like I was going there because I was an awful human being, because all human beings are awful. And like that's a messed up thing to tell like a 3 or 4 year old. And when you tell a 3 or 4 year old that really sticks with them. And so like for me, what I've talked about is my journey through my deconstruction is documented elsewhere, but like the idea of hell kept me in the religion for a long time, even when I really didn't believe many of the tenets of the religion or the doctrines or the dogmas. But one of the things that really kind of helped me get through some of my own personal hell trauma was this concept of like what happens after you die. And I don't remember who it was, like a smart person, a philosopher or somebody, like the analogy was like, what do you remember about before you lived? And so just kind of this idea of like what hubris through like our own consciousness exists, that like something, because we're aware that we're alive, we're this entity that has life, that, and we're self-aware, that then like that impacts our afterlife. And so if there's a soul or if there's an afterlife, like it's a pretty big assumption that we would be like cognizant of some sort of afterlife. And so this idea of like through infinite time from far away, like if matter cannot be created or destroyed, then like whatever entity, like soul or whatever happened, existed beforehand, is going to exist afterhand, like after your life. Then you're not going to remember it either way, because you don't remember what came before, you're not going to remember what after. That's not what I believe now personally. Like I don't think there is a thing. I think it's consciousness is like a weird, we're just self-aware, like we're a mammal that is self-aware of our existence. It's, there is no afterlife, there is no soul, there's nothing that, you know, thing. And like that's really freeing for me as somebody who was raised in this high control religion, and having all this fear of like torture. It's really nice to be like, hey, we get one shot at this, let's try and make the most of it. That'll come up in the song, segueing back on topic. But just I like that kind of concept of like, not that I personally believe it, but it is a fun kind of thought experiment for like what afterlife, like pre-life, like what came before life, what do you remember? Nothing. So like, sure, if you want it to be infinite cosmos from far across dimensions, like you can go ahead, hypothesize away. So yeah, here we go. Nekrogoblikon's like does heavy metal, and then they'll do like weird like happily poppy stuff. And like I'm a sucker for a song that sounds really happy and is very depressing lyrics. Like The Entertainer by Billy Joel is my example that I always use of like, the lyrics are so sad in that song, and yet it's such a happy, peppy song. So like Nekrogoblikon will mix in like these peppy things in their songs while having really dark lyric content, and then they'll go super heavy and like metal, like heavy metal. I threw up the horns before. And so it's, my ADHD brain really likes all these different genres they mash together. So picking up after, I'm trying to live a better life. I'm going to die. I'm trying to live, I'm trying to, just when I think life ain't so bad, I'm going to die, I'm going to. Woke up this morning, wanted to die, just like every other day. So I took some poison I got from some guy who I found on Craigslist. Then I emailed my family to say I was dead, and that I never loved them. Left them with one small problem, I'm still alive. I'm trying to live. Okay. Don't kill yourself. It's a Bo Burnham song that I believe it's called Kill Yourself, and one of his jokes during it is don't kill yourself. This song is not advocating for suicide. The band isn't advocating for ending your life. I'm not advocating for ending your life. They're trying to inject some light play, some satire around a pretty hard topic, but I like it. I working in the mental health field, I talk regularly about suicide. I have people who are having suicidal thoughts. I have people who are otherwise healthy and happy individuals who struggle with suicidal ideation, just kind of nonstop. Like there's some chemical component to it in your brain. And so it's a really interesting thing. You know, we're still learning about a lot of what goes on around brain chemistry, like this idea of like serotonin being a neurotransmitter that affects depression. Like that's still a hypothesis, and like we're still working on some of these things. So like it's 2019, like huge asterisk, right? This is a YouTube video. I'm a licensed therapist, but watching my YouTube videos does not create a therapeutic relationship. But like there's research that came out that basically said like folic acid, which is like vitamin B9, reduces people's suicidal ideation by like a significant amount. Not that it works for everybody, but like some of this again is like this idea. We've been on the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, as antidepressant medication for so long, and then like this research comes along and says, hey, like some of it's just a vitamin deficiency, and if people get enough folic acid, they feel less suicidal. So like it's really fascinating. I think there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of unnecessary guilt around suicidal thinking and suicidal ideation that makes it more dangerous. Like keeping it inside and struggling on your own is worse for you than it is to talk about these things, especially with a licensed mental health professional. So yeah, the song here kind of comically is like trying to live, being frustrated, um, trying to live a better life, and everything kind of sucking. And so a little bit of a tongue in cheek, like it's comical for those of us who are old enough to remember Craigslist before it really got shut down. Craigslist was like a weird kind of online marketplace, and it had like a shady underside for sure. Like it was seedy, like take your friends with you if you're going to buy something off Craigslist, or like, you could go buy a used phone for really cheap, but like take someone with you so you don't get murdered, because Craigslist is kind of seedy. And so it's a little bit of humor there around buying poison off Craigslist, which then doesn't work, right? Like this person takes a bunch of poison, sends off a suicide note, tells their friends, family they never loved them, and then they're still alive. So like it's humorous that their attempt of suicide, which is not a funny topic, is that, of course, poison you get off of Craigslist from some weird stranger who's selling poison doesn't work. So again, like some satire here, like suicide isn't a lighthearted or funny topic, and yet bringing this up as a way to kind of do that. Don't buy poison off Craigslist. You could get like a couch off Craigslist, I guess. I don't know what Craigslist is on. Craigslist really took a dive when whatever federal jurisdiction shut down advertising for sex work on Craigslist, and it was on other things, but it keeps getting regulated, and it's a whole separate topic. But like Craigslist had like a hookup site that got shut down, a hookup section of it that got like severely limited, and that really hurt their internet presence. So millennials, older millennials, elder millennials, and I'm 35. Remember like Craigslist being a pretty big thing for a while, and younger people, you might not really remember it. So let's go to verse 2. Musical interlude here. I just want to say, like, I listened to the whole musical interlude. Again, like humorously taking like metal and like it's very like dark and heavy and satanic and whatever else like kind of stereotypes exist around metal, and like having a lot of fun with it, like that kazoo type like pinwheel sound earlier, and then like just again like the peppy stuff. If you're hopefully my media person is more talented than I, and we can maybe have the lyric video up. But Nekrogoblikon has an actual goblin that goes on tour with them. His name is John Goblikon, and it might just be John Goblin. I might be mixing things up here. But yeah, his head's kind of the sing along thing for the video, and it's very humorous. Okay, right before the breakdown here, we're going to take a little break and talk about verse 2. Again, this is not a funny topic, but like woke up this morning, I'm still alive, and then like in the background, there's just a log pronounced fuck. It's pretty funny, and also a great use of the word chagrin. They pronounce it chagrin for musical purposes, but it's a good word, chagrin. So yeah, I like this aspect of the song a lot, because it's one of those things where like oftentimes when you're feeling suicidal and you're dealing with suicidal thinking, like you feel very isolated. And again, that's where like the guilt and the shame around some of these things is really unhelpful. Like having this be a taboo topic isolates people. And so people who are feeling like no one cares about me, or that like I'd be better off not alive anymore, or I shouldn't be here, or like they have these thoughts, and that's not all suicidal thoughts. A lot of suicidal ideation is around like being ill or struggling or having something that isn't going well in your life, and genuinely just wanting the pain to go away, just wanting it to stop being so hard or to stop hurting. And that's different than necessarily actively wanting to kill yourself. Although there's a lot of overlap that can occur there. Again, because people are spending so much time in their alone in their heads with these thoughts, it gets really hard to kind of like understand and fully know where they're all coming from. So, but that idea of like, I'm alone, no one cares. And then in the song here, like 187 missed calls, like people obviously care. Like this person sends off this tongue-in-cheek email, I never loved you and now I'm dead. And like via email, which is a weird format, I guess. Not that there's don't kill yourself. This is a hard topic to talk about satirically. Which is why professional musicians did it much more artistically than my breakdown is going. But it's one of those things where, sends this email off and like, I don't care, and then gets all this care in return. And that's where I think, too, a lot of people are like, oh, don't glorify suicide and don't talk about suicide. On the flip side of like shaming suicide is like not to glorify it. And I agree. I think a lot of people, sometimes suicides in certain towns or geographic locations or like within a school will kind of chain off of each other, because what happens is like there's this outpouring of support and like all these people are sad, and then for somebody who feels very isolated, like that can be really either triggering for them, or also like they could really desire it. So we can get a little messy around like how do we like honor and love and support people without like glorifying it. Like show people love and attention while they're alive would be great. Simple solution there. So here's the breakdown. Here's where it gets a little metal. If you're not using the follow along, I think you should, because this is helpful to have the lyrics. I'm used to listening to metal, so I can usually, not always, understand what metal singers are growling away at. But yeah, here's the breakdown. All right, and then before we go into some progressive rock space jam stuff, the breakdown here, like this is the part of the song that I really like, and like Nekrogoblikon has a couple songs that I really enjoy, and they do like the breakdown really good. Like it's so aggressive, and then they'll throw in like some weird techno stuff, and my brain just lights up in all these different ways for it. Their cover of Chop Suey by System of a Down is fantastic. Another song about that deals with the topic of suicide. But again, like they can do heavy music and then like light, silly electronica, and it's just delightful. The music video for Chop Suey is brutal. It's very dark and a black comedy, but if you're into black comedy, also worth checking out. I like Nekrogoblikon. But this idea of like middle finger to the law, right? Like I said before, like for me, that was coming from a place of neurodivergence and also like not fitting with a high control religion. And so my brain didn't fit. And so there's always this like rebellion, or this was like, you know, fuck the world, fuck everybody in it. Like I had that. And so songs like this really like scratch that itch for me. Like this is on a lot of my playlists, on my mow the lawn playlist. So I'll be like out mowing the lawn and like headbanging like fuck this world and everyone in it. Like that's not how I feel. Like I'm a therapist. I care about people. I want you to be alive. Even if I don't know you, you're valuable and important and you should stay alive. And I feel that genuinely. And yet like for me, music like this and metal in general really allows for some of the like angry, like dark, heavy stuff, like, you know, like reading about the Supreme Court upsets me on the regular. Like politics is upsetting, global warming is upsetting, all these things that are upsetting to us that we have no power over, that's not up to us to control. Like metal and music that gives voice to some of those feelings is a really safe and healthy outlet for a lot of people. There's no research that's ever backed up that like listening to angry music makes you an angry person. There's no research that's ever made like playing violent video games makes you a violent person. Like what typically the research shows rather is that having a healthy outlet for these things is important. important for people. There's research that suggests on a longitudinal basis, so studied over many years, that people who listen to metal are actually happier, healthier people because they have this outlet for some of these complicated, difficult emotions that we don't necessarily have good outlets for in society. I say this to people often. Emotions are neutral. There aren't good or bad emotions. Anger isn't a bad emotion. What typically happens for people where anger is bad is their behaviors attached to anger are bad. So like putting a hole in the wall, that's bad. That's unhelpful. It doesn't help your wrist. And if you're doing it around other people, it can be scary and intimidating for them. So like that's not a safe activity for you or for other people or for the wall objectively. Although let's not pretend like property destruction is as important as human life, capitalist society. But it's one of those things where, again, so the behavior is punching a hole in the wall. That's bad. That's unhelpful. It's unhealthy. And so we conflate those things in our society where rather like anger might be valid, might be justified. That emotion is neutral, then being able to slow down our process to self-soothe and regulate our system so that we can choose to make a healthier action with that emotion. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, right, anger isn't bad or wrong. We just need an outlet. Sports, for me, is another example. I have a long background in sports performance. I'm a coach. I played college sports. For me, sports, hitting a ball as hard as you can, like that's cathartic. Like that's a socially acceptable way to get anger out. So it's one of those things where I think like having these outlets is important. Metal for a lot of people, headbanging, being part of a community, like there's a bunch of stuff that this music can provide for people who really relate to it. So yeah, I like the breakdown. Now it goes a little space rocky, so you'll just awkwardly watch me. So if we're following along, maybe we have it up. Shout out to Kenny, my media person, if it's up. The video, the sing-along video ends with "Hope this gave you a laugh and that you stay alive" from the band Nekrogoblikon. Like again, like satire. Please don't die. This is not encouragement for suicide. But like a kind of a hopeful end to the song, honestly, that I like. That like failure after failure and the frustration and like I'm trying to live a better life, but maybe one more attempt. And so I like that. I talk about in other places like post-traumatic growth. I think I talked about it in the Batman video when I was talking about PTSD. Like there's the Batman, the movie, because I probably have more than one Batman video up at this point. There's this idea that like growth can occur. And so when I'm working with, I've spent a lot of time working with college-aged students and student athletes over the years, like seeing people who at 18, 19 are struggling with their mental health and they flourish in their adulthood. Like there's there's this concept of like growth that can still happen. There's nurturing, like these feelings, these thoughts, suicidal ideation. These are temporary feelings. They're temporary thoughts. Like most people do not live with these things forever, and even for the people who have them through a consistent history for some reason in their life, like it gets manageable, and there's still reason for living. Like there's still good things that are coming up. So I also let the song run the whole thing because I like the hey 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 chanting at the end. I think is helpful, and like that's ritual. Like we as human beings are wired for like social connection, and being at a music venue and everybody chanting, that regulates like our central nervous systems together. Like it actually gets our heartbeats to beat at the same time. That's why a lot of ritual things have like drum beats or chanting involved with it. That's why religious services have the big organs that like, and all the acoustics for the church to really make you feel something. And like that feeling is your nervous system regulating. And when that happens in mass, it's not like some sort of like magical experience. It's just like that feeling of connection is like we're all being connected to this thing. And so I like the like kind of outro there with like the chanting and like kind of this idea of like we don't have anything like profound to offer you other than like it's fun to all chant together. So like let's have a little sing along. And that idea of like, hey, we're each given one life. We got one chance on like this rock hurtling through space. And like, what are we doing with it? Let's do something together. And so and reading into it a little bit and trying to put a nice bow on a video that's about suicide. But like, that's, I think, some reality to it of like, hey, like things can get better. Let's work through it together. Like, let's make a better tomorrow. Maybe one more attempt, and not in like a doom and gloom sort of way, but coming back to that thought of like another attempt. Like, let's get it better. Let's try and make it better. Let's do what we can to make it better. So yeah, I've never worked with somebody who convinced me that suicide was a good option for them. I've worked with a lot of people who have suicidal thoughts and who have ideation around it. And I don't think that's a shameful thing. I think that's a thing that we need help with. We need to learn how to manage and cope with in a healthy way. But I think it's something that needs to be talked about. We need to be more open and realistic about this is something that pops up. It's not doom and gloom. It might be a crisis, and we might need to handle it in a crisis situation, but it's also something that we can work through. We can learn to manage. We can learn to respond in a helpful way. There is no shame around having these thoughts. But it's the thing that we want to get help with. So I'm a licensed therapist, obviously, doing these videos, but there's lots of different things. I have them down in the show notes. 988 is the new crisis line. You can call or text. The Trevor Project is a great thing that works, crisis line for LGBTQ young people. And so there's some other things. We'll have resources down there for hotlines and crisis lines and all these things. There's people out there who want to be helpful, people like me who like are happy that you're alive, the band Nekrogoblikon that want you to stay alive. So again, not making light of the topic, but using satire and some humor, even if it's dark humor, to talk about what's a difficult topic, and get a pretty fun rock song out of it. So check out Nekrogoblikon. I like them a lot. If you like metal, maybe you don't like metal, their cover of like Chop Suey is phenomenal, and they have some funny YouTube skits with their John Goblikon. I should have looked that up. I changed my mind on what song I was going to review right before I started recording. So, but Nekrogoblikon awesome. That little bouncing head was the goblin, and then was the lead singer doing the hey, hey, hey part. So again, like they're a fun band. They do a lot of fun stuff. They were touring with Guar, which is like a band that dresses up as like intergalactic space dinosaur monster type. So like, hey, that's their vibe. Super fun. Metal's really fun when you're like in the community. Like metalheads are a good time and very cool people to be around. So that was Going to Die by Nekrogoblikon. Thanks for stopping by, checking out the channel. Peace.